Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining the City of Chicago BACP Small Business E-Expo. We will now begin our second webinar. The webinar is Financial Guidance for Small Businesses in a Changing World, presented by EPS of Fifth Third and Brad McConnell of Accion, serving Illinois and Indiana. Before we begin, please note that if you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn about the program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. I will provide this information in the chat box, so you'll be able to reference it. Also, if you have any general questions, please email bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. You can reference the agenda for the day by visiting smallbizexpo.com. And of course, assuming all goes well, we will be uploading the webinar sessions to youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Please note that the presentation slides will not be distributed to attendees. There will be a question and answer opportunity at the end of this presentation for questions related directly to the presentation topic. Please use the chat box to ask questions. Now, both of the panelists and their organizations have been strong partners with the City of Chicago and offer a variety of financial resources for entrepreneurs. In addition, Fifth Third Bank has been an Expo sponsor for over 3 years. They have supported our Expos and, more importantly, want to support our business community. Like I mentioned, with us today is F of Fifth Third Bank, who will provide a little bit more information about Fifth Third's commitment to entrepreneurs. He will be followed by Brad McConnell, CEO of Accion, serving Illinois and Indiana. Welcome, Brad and F.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for attending today. My name is Epps. I'm the Financial Center Manager for Fifth Third Bank at the Burbank location. And I just want to say Fifth Third is a proud sponsor of these Small Business Expo, and we believe and understand the importance of small businesses to our community, and we will continue to support you throughout this pandemic. Also joining with me today is Brad, CEO of Accion. Brad?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the city. Thank you, EPS to Fifth Third, for all of the good work that you do in supporting small businesses. Most importantly, thank you to all of you small business owners who are participating today. I'm going to share my screen in an attempt to provide an overview, and I'm going to do this briefly, for the capital options that are available right now to small business owners throughout Illinois, and in particular, small business owners in the city of Chicago, so that then, as you've been thinking about all of the assistance that is available to you, the free coaching from organizations like SCORE, the financial institutions that are going to be interested in helping, you know where emergency capital can be found. And so I'll do that in, say, between 10 and 15 minutes. I'm going to do that as quickly as I can so that we can then answer as many of your questions as we possibly can get to, in order to make sure that we are making this time as valuable as we can for you, because we know how valuable your time is in trying to run a good business in any moment, let alone a moment like this. So let's start by just quickly, I'll just introduce Accion. So Accion is a mission-driven community development financial institution, and our mission is to help neighborhood entrepreneurs grow. We do that by providing the capital and the coaching and the connections that small business owners need to create the wealth and jobs we want you to create throughout Illinois and Indiana. We have a particular focus, though, on the south and west sides of Chicago. Our home is at East Garfield Park in the Hatchery, which is a food and beverage incubator that we just opened last year. We're both one of the two main tenants and also one of the two owners. And so once we get through the pandemic and social distancing is no longer a thing, we certainly invite all of you to visit us at the Hatchery, and we'll be doing that hopefully in the new year as soon as possible. But in the meantime, we're here to help in whatever way we can because our team is working as hard as possible remotely in order to give you the assistance that you require. So let's talk about the emergency capital options that either have been or now currently are open. This is an overview. We're going to spend specific time on each of the 4 items that I've marked in red here, but I'm just going to run through the big picture really quickly to start. So the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans are still currently available. You can apply directly to the SBA for those. Although specifically for the purposes of thinking about emergency money now, note that the upfront grants that were once a part of the EIDL loans are no longer available. And so that's it's not nearly as attractive of a financial option as it once was earlier in the summer. Paycheck Protection Program, same thing. That'll be, hopefully, we hope, a subject in which if you have a loan before, new loan forgiveness will be coming, although the SBA and the Treasury have not forgiven any loans yet. We'll focus then on the state, the county, city, and then a couple local options. And most importantly, I think we'll focus on the business interruption grants, and we'll spend more time on that in just a moment. But this is the $220 million that the state is seeking to distribute by the end of this year to small businesses, including in the city of Chicago. That is grant money that you don't have to pay back. There have been multiple other grants and loan programs that the state has initiated, which are now closed, so we won't focus too much on those. At the county level, if you are a suburban Cook County business, there is a grant opportunity available for you called the COVID-19 Recovery Small Business Assistance Offering. If you're within the city of Chicago, you aren't eligible for that grant, but you are eligible for the free coaching as a part of that program. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Within the city of Chicago, the Together Now grants are still, the funding is almost distributed in full. The small business resiliency loans are still continuing to fund. We do hope to be able to fund many, many more of those over the course of the fourth quarter, so more to come on that for sure. There's been previous grants as well. And then we're going to spend a minute on the Westside United small business grants, which are specifically focused on businesses on the West Side, and then what Accion will do in Q4 for lending on an emergency basis. So that's the sequence of things that we're going to discuss here over the next several minutes. Let's start with the business interruption grants. All businesses in the state of Illinois which had under than $20 million in revenue in 2019 are eligible. It's a huge pot of money, $220 million still to grant. This is on top of the $49 million that the state already granted through this program. The size of the grants is between $5,000 and $150,000, and you can access the application through the URL that you see there. Or if you prefer, go to Google and type DCEO BIG. There's a landing page there that gives you all the details that are necessary in order to know what the eligibility criteria are, what the priority criteria are, and therefore the likelihood of being able to succeed in this. But most importantly, and I'm going to do this throughout each and every one of the programs that I discussed briefly here, the material that you have to have available is the same type of material you're going to need even after the pandemic is complete in order to access capital. And so I'm going to pause on this just for a moment because it's important to get grants now, but it's equally important to be able to secure capital, loans or grants or equity later. And so for many of you, this is really basic stuff, but I want to just repeat it to make sure we all have the same set of facts here. The important documents to have ready are, first, make sure that you have your signed 2019 tax return. Even if you were able to get an extension, you're going to be much faster to get through this application queue and certainly in the spring be able to secure more access to capital if you have your 2019 federal return filed, signed, and available to share. Second, the business bank statements that you have from your bank are crucial for the sizing of this particular grant and in the future to be able to establish separate from your personal bank account information and all the debits and credits that go into that, the business cash flows that are going in and out of your segmented business bank accounts. And so particularly for the business interruption grants, we're asking for July and August of 2019 business bank statements, and also July and August 2020 business bank statements. So 2 bank statements, pre-pandemic and post the onset of the pandemic, so we can evaluate the loss that your business has suffered and therefore size the grant accordingly. Third, make sure you have all the licenses that you require for whatever industry you're in your particular location, because we'll ask you for that in this particular case, and you'll be asked for that over and over again in the future as well. Those are the basics. Make sure that all of those things are in hand for you so that you can apply here and elsewhere in order to be really successful in accessing the capital that you need in order to be able to then successfully grow your business in the way that you'd like. We can spend much more time on this in the Q&A about exactly how the eligibility criteria works for the business interruption grants, but we'll come back to that in the Q&A. For the county program that I mentioned, these are $10,000, and they're specifically focused on suburban Cook businesses. That's where the business is located, regardless if you happen to be a City of Chicago resident. Your business is located suburban Cook, then you're eligible for these grants. The amount of money that's available is going to be, in total, $12.6 million. And we're going to be focusing on providing free coaching as well. Now, the free coaching is for any business within the City of Chicago or anywhere else in Cook County, even though the grants are focused on the suburban Cook County. So you see the link there, Cook County Small Business Assistance. That's the landing page to go to in order to be able to apply for this initiative. And the application deadline is coming up. So this one expires on October 6th. Unlike the business interruption grants, for which it's a rolling application, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible, but there's no particular deadline associated with that. So I'll just say that by October 6th, make sure that you have a very full and complete application, because in all cases, whether you're applying for a grant or a loan or it might be, if you're missing some of the documentation that's required, or if you're not fully filling out all the fields, that will delay your opportunity to get into the place in which you'd like to be in that queue for evaluation purposes. So October 6th for this one. Third, this one, Westside United Small Business Grants, this application is open through October 16th. And this is specifically focused for businesses that are operating in the 10 community areas on the west side that you see here. And more specifically, the emphasis is on hospital serving industries or community serving retail. In other words, what Westside United is a collection of health institutions on the west side is trying to achieve here is that they're trying to figure out ways in order to provide grant dollars to small businesses who those hospitals can then help further on top of that by using some of their procurement spend, which they have to spend anyway, spending it with small businesses who are operating on the west side in order to keep that revenue, keep that wealth in the west side where we want it to stay. So again, deadline on this one is October 16th, and the application short link is there, but if you Google Westside United Small Business Grant, you will find it just as easily. And finally, Accion is now, this is ourselves now, we are returning to our more, what I'll call more normal lending and our term loans and our lines of credit in the month of October. And I don't know the exact date yet, but it's coming shortly. And we're doing so in parallel with the continuing lending that we're doing in the emergency programs, particularly within the City of Chicago, that's Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund. We're going to be doing the loans that we would typically have done up to $50,000. It's a 9% rate. So if you're able to get grant dollars or emergency loan dollars at, say, 3 or 4%, you should take it. We're doing programs like that all the time. This is essentially going to be a fallback, where if you still need capital on top of that, it's not protected by any of these emergency programs, so it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a lot better than the 50% interest rate you're going to get charged online typically. So we encourage you to, if this is something that's interesting to you, then to use the link that you see there in order to do so on our website. All of that is all in the context of remembering just this. If you need anything at all, Accion will provide free business assistance in whatever it is that you need. So through our coaches, through our entrepreneur relations help desks, for which we've established each one in English and Spanish for every single one of these programs, which you'll find on the homepage of each program, we're here to help. So I just encourage you to use that web link that you see there, which is us.accion.org/ILCOVID. That is our emergency web page, emergency capital web page. We're constantly updating that with any opportunity that is new or with deadlines approaching for emergency grants, emergency loans. So the links that you will need will always be found there, both to the applications and also to the help in whatever way you might need it. You can also email us at any time at help@accionchicago.org. But I hope that kind of giving you a big picture of all the different levels of emergency capital that are available now, and also some of the key things that you should be preparing for in order to be successful in securing that capital, that gives you a feeling for the financial assistance that's available right now. And also the wraparound coaching. It's always free, and we can provide it any time that you would like, in whatever form that you'd like. So I'm going to stop there. Like I said, I was trying to get through 10, 15 minutes worth of material there so that we can spend time on your questions to make this time as valuable as possible for you. But I'll invite then the questions through the chat to come through, and with BACP's help, I will answer as many as I can.
Thank you, Brad, so much for the overview. As you can tell, there's lots of opportunities for grants and loans with Accion, different government agencies. So we highly recommend that you reach out to them. You know, we're here to support and assist you through the process, and we want to get back on track. We want businesses to thrive in Chicago. So thank you so much, Brad, for a little bit of information for each one. We did have a question come in. First question is, I'm looking to start a business in Chicago. Where do I start with funding?
It's a great question. And first, let me say, I am deeply impressed with your confidence and resilience to be able to start a new business in a really terrible economic moment. I think that's excellent. It's also very hard because at the time at which you've got so many existing small businesses that had already begun before the pandemic started looking for assistance, most of the resources are focusing on trying to help those businesses survive. And so I think that will largely be true until the end of the year, when the federal CARES Act money, that $2.6 trillion of the federal government appropriated in April, that of the Paycheck Protection Program and some other things. Until all of that money is expended, which is focused on existing businesses, most of the efforts are going to be for helping those existing businesses because that's where the capital is, the free money in particular, the grants. So if you're seeking to start a new business, I think certainly Accion is one place to go once we begin our lending again. But on top of that, I think working with your individual local chambers, local support organizations to then find really creative ways to get at least small dollars from programs that might be hyper-specific at that local level, including the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, the Small Business Improvement Fund, those types of initiatives, which again are mostly focused on existing businesses, but not exclusively. I think those are additional opportunities perhaps that might be useful for you. So I'll just say bluntly, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to find capital for a brand new business until existing businesses and all the capital is available to them have been taken care of to the extent that the money will go as far as it goes, at least until the end of this year. But there will be opportunities through Accion and those local organizations to help at least a little bit.
Great, thank you. And I do want to mention that BACP does partner with the Neighborhood Business Development Centers that Brad mentioned. I'll post the link in the chat, but it is chicago.gov/NBDC. And these are local organizations throughout the city of Chicago that have small business resources. They're in the community. They're there for one-on-one assistance. A lot of them are working remotely, but they'll set up a Zoom call. They'll set up a WebEx call, so please reach out. Let's see. Another question came in. How important is your credit score when applying for loans and grants?
Good question. When applying for grants, your credit score is irrelevant. So one of the benefits of applying for and securing a grant is you don't have to pay it back. And therefore, it makes no difference what your credit score would have been in the past. In applying for a loan, that's very different. And so in applying for a loan, I'm going to talk first about sort of normal times and then talk about pandemic times. Applying for a loan, the credit score is going to be an important determinant of the way that your credit application will be evaluated. So generally, the credit score, that single number, is used as a catch-all for everything that's in your credit history and all the different trade lines that you might have had over the course of time, whether those be personal or business. I'll just say that at Accion, we try very hard to look past that single number and try to get into, well, what's really happening here? Because a lot of our clients have no credit at all. That's fine. We just need some other way to substantiate that we think that this is a really good credit risk that is likely for them to repay, or they have a low credit score. And in that case, we try to figure out why that is. For example, you have a low credit score, and the reason is you had a hospitalization, which means you got behind on your bills. Well, that's not an indication of the fact that you don't care about repaying your debtors at all. So we ignore that. If, on the other hand, you haven't paid your bills for, say, 4 months in a row, and it goes across all the different bills that you currently have, that is a decent indicator to us that it's probably not wise for us to provide you with yet more debt that'll be hard for you to pay back if you're struggling to repay already. So I think it's going to be used for sure in loan contexts, and different organizations use it differently. And some use it creatively, and some use it really just as a blunt sort of single number. But most importantly, for grants, it's irrelevant, and that's the good news there. Oh, I should say then, in emergency time. So what I described for the use of credit scores in normal times is that. In this emergency, we totally recognize that the whole point of the emergency service is that we know that people are struggling. It's not their fault. It's because we had to shut down businesses in order to make sure we keep people safe. So the emergency loaning programs that we're doing, and in partnership with the city in particular, your credit score only has to be a minimum of 500, which is much, much, much lower than any lending institution would typically be using. All we're looking for here is just the ability to, and the intent to have repaid as much as you can over the course of time. And so what we found is just something in the high 90% of the applicants in that program had at least a 500 credit score. And so we feel good about that being a really sort of easy to meet target, although certainly it does require some degree of diligence in your repayments. That emergency evaluation of credit is very different than what you'll see coming out of the pandemic going back into normal times. But I think it's important to note that it's very different in the emergency.
And thank you. Let's see. Next question is, I haven't filed our 2019 tax returns yet. Will 2018 work?
I'll speak specifically for the business interruption grant program, where this is a question that we're dealing with a lot. In circumstances where you've not filed your 2019 taxes yet, there are two options here. One is that there's an option at the end of the application to just stipulate that I have not filed my 2019 taxes yet. In that case, you then are prompted to attest to the fact that your business has lost at least $5,000 because of the pandemic. And so, provided you can attest to that and be ready to prove that upon being audited later, if you happen to get randomly selected for that, then you'll be eligible for that minimum amount of $5,000 for a grant. You also have the alternative of showing your business bank statements in July and August of 2019, business bank statements in July and August of 2020, and your 2018 tax return in order to give us a more full picture. And in that case, you may be eligible for a larger grant amount than $5,000. So it depends on how you want to proceed on that, but you do have options.
Can you apply for the big grant if you received a grant the first time around?
Yes. So there's a question on the application for the business interruption grants in which you're asked to just provide us with which of the emergency capital opportunities throughout 2020 you've been able to secure so far. That's inclusive of Paycheck Protection Program, the first round of business interruption grants, the Together Now grant that we worked on with the city, and many others. The important point here is that even though you are eligible for another grant through Big Round 2, which is what we're working on right now, the losses that you're covering, in other words, the expenses that you incur, the purpose of getting this second grant needs to be for a different set of losses or expenses that you're seeking to cover. The federal government statute explicitly says that you can't use federal money twice for the same thing. But you can get access to federal money through the state, through the city, whatever the mechanism might be, as long as you're not using that money for the same thing. So if you want to cover, say, for example, your losses in May with the first grant and the losses in July with the second grant, that's fine. So that's the only nuance there, but it is an important one.
Next question is, do you know if the SBA would be willing to add to the modest loan I have already secured? The rate and payback is very reasonable. Also, can you talk more about lines of credit?
For the SBA, I hesitate to speak for them, but I will say that generally, if you apply particularly for the economic injury disaster loans, those EIDL loans, that generally they will evaluate your application based on the existing need that you can substantiate now, without regard to what you would have done before. Now, that's not the full rule, and I can't therefore sort of stipulate exactly what the SBA will do, but generally speaking, that's what we have observed. Through their normal programs, that they don't originate themselves and instead use SBA dollars through organizations like Accion and many others who partner with the SBA to do loans, you absolutely can apply in order to get an SBA loan that way. So it kind of depends on the mechanism directly to answer that. With a line of credit, so the way this works is that, and I'll speak from Accion's experience, but I think I can extrapolate broadly on the way that most organizations originate lines of credit. The idea here is that unlike a term loan where you take all of the money that you borrow at the closing table and all of that money then goes directly into your bank account and then you pay back on a fixed basis over the course of time, same amount of principal and interest each month until, say, 60 months later or whatever it is, 36 months later, you've now fully paid back that loan. In the case of a line of credit, you have the right to take at the closing table the full amount of the loan which you are eligible to borrow, but you don't have to. And the reason why it's different and important is that if you don't need all that money at that moment, you shouldn't take it because you're paying interest on all of it, right? So if, let's say, you take 25% of your overall line of credit that you have available to you at the closing table, on a monthly basis, you're just paying back the interest on that 25%, but you pay no interest on the other 75%. But then when you need it, 4 months from now, you got a big contract that you got a front fund and you're going to get paid, 90 days later, 90 whatever it is. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of process and apply and all that. You've already got access to that other 75% of the money that you had been provided via contract with, say, somebody like us. So you just go get it and bring that money down and then pay back on the whole of 100% at that point. But you would have saved yourself on paying interest in those interim months you didn't need it. And so in that way, it's a much more flexible tool for financing if that's appropriate for you.
Okay. And just a general announcement that this webinar is being recorded, and we're hopeful that everything goes well, and it will be posted on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. I will post that in the chat. So you'll be able to reference this presentation, especially the slides that Brad showed once again. Next question is, my business started in January 2020 and is impacted by COVID. Can I still apply to these grants if I do not have any 2019 taxes or bank records?
Yes, so provided that you started before the pandemic and January qualifies, then there's an option at the bottom of the business interruption grants, just to state one example, in which you can specify just that. So all the bottom, it would say, at the same time at which you're being asked, do you have a 2019 federal signed tax return to upload? You can either say, no, I haven't filed yet, or you could say my business is too new and I haven't even been required to file. In that case, then you're asked to provide just a little bit of a sort of qualitative summary. So write a little bit for us about the fact you just started in January. Your losses are the following, and what I do have for you is the following documents, whatever those might be. So our expectation is that we will have some number of businesses that are in that circumstance. So we tried to build in the flexibility to give you the option on the application to explain that to us so that when we're going through these thousands and thousands of applications, we know when we get to yours, got it. There's a reason why we don't see all the other required documents, and they provided this instead. We'll evaluate you on that basis.
Good. My business has been applying for grants since the pandemic, but for some reason we weren't able to receive any funding, but I know people with no business at all that received funding. Is there something specific that they are looking for that I might not be aware of?
Well, that's a good question. First, there's no doubt that the demand for emergency money is far greater than the supply available. That's terrible. But it is where we are, and so we and others, including the city, BACP, the state, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, are basically trying to do the best we can with every single penny we can find, grabbing it from wherever so we can shovel that to as many small businesses as possible in the most equitable manner possible. For people who received small business grants without having a business at all, that's fraud. And so those people have significant liability to pay back with penalty for attesting to things that aren't true. So I don't recommend that. If they get caught doing that, then that's a really bad thing. So taking fraud aside, which we do the best we can to try to weed out, but if it happens, enforcement will follow. For those who are eligible businesses, I think the business interruption grants, this $220 million that we're trying to get out the door right now, this is the biggest pot that we have had and will have. So it will go far, far further than any of the grant programs that have been put out to date, because there's just a lot more money. So I'd highly encourage you to apply for that, filling out the application that is available now, and to do so as quickly as you can, but do so in a very full way so you provide all the documentation and all the information that's required. Because if we get to a full application, we're going to evaluate it right there. If we get to one that is half done, then it goes to the bottom while we ask questions to get more documents from you. So my hope is that through that process, you're able to secure grant funds, because we know the need is huge, and we very much hope for you to be able to get those funds to help you sustain your business.
And a follow-up question to that, I was led to believe that folks not qualifying would be given specific information / reasons as to why. Is that not the case?
Let's see, a couple knots in there and make sure I got this right. So if you apply for the business interruption grants, and I'm picking on that only because it's the biggest one. The rules are different, the mechanisms are different, each and every one of the grants we're talking about. But let's just talk about business interruption grants for the minute. For these grants, every business in Illinois is eligible, provided that you have revenues of less than $20 million and your business began before the pandemic started, so in January. So this is less a question of whether you're eligible, but rather whether in all the prioritization the state is putting in place, how you sort of fit into all of those different sortings and randomizations that we're performing in order for the state to meet the overall state policy objectives of making sure that money goes to the places that have been hardest hit, although everyone has been hard hit, and that the equity is involved there for gender and race and location and all of the different, and industry and all the different ways in which they're trying to split the funds that they have, even with a pot that's that big. So in this case, I don't think that there'll be immediate responses as to why your application was ineligible, because it likely will be eligible. That won't be the problem. It'll simply be that the money is running, that the money ran out before every single eligible application could be funded.
This next question, I will have Epps with Fifth Third Bank answer first, and then Brad, you could answer as well. But I started my business after the pandemic hit. Are there any grants or loans that will support my effort to start up? Epps, if you want to talk a little bit about any startup financing that Fifth Third offers.
Actually, I'm going to have to unfortunately refer this to Brad. On our banking side right now, we don't have any options available. Brad, would you like to address that one?
Yeah, same as I discussed before. It's going to be very tough for somebody to start up now with financing, given that such focus is being provided to existing businesses to help as many of those survive as possible. So Accion will be evaluating startups. We'll be doing so later, I'd say end of October is what our target is for having financing available. But it'll be in relatively small dollar amounts, just to be totally transparent about that. And the reason is that for new businesses without a track record, we have very little to go on figuring out how to predict in the midst of an economy that we have no experience with, none of us do, in trying to recover from a pandemic with unemployment so high. We have very little experience to fall back on in order to figure out like who's a good credit risk and who isn't without any track record at all for the business. So in these cases, we're looking for perhaps the track record that a business owner would have from running a previous business. That would help. Could be that the business owner has a really solid credit score, credit history on their own as an individual. Maybe we'll be able to sort of rely upon that. It'll be tough, but we're going to try the best we can to try to create some story for helping a brand new business that doesn't have that history in an environment that we have no one has any experience in doing real underwriting in. So we will certainly be an option. I do think the option is quite limited, just to be completely honest about that.
One thing I would add on that is that in the banking center, a lot of times a client will try to do things under the business as a new entity. What we are looking at sometimes is looking on the personal side to provide your own financing for that business. So in case you're looking for stuff for your business itself, maybe we need to change that focus to you doing a loan or some type of a program under your personal, and you would actually fund your business yourself. So we do take a look at that in the financial center as an individual instead of as a business.
Thank you both for your honesty and explanation of what is offered during this time for startups. A follow-up question for Epps is, do you recommend a business and checking and savings account? And is a bank account needed to get a line of credit with Fifth Third?
All right, very good question. We always recommend having a business account. The purpose is to not commingle funds. And also when you go to do your grants and things like that, you're able to supply a bank statement that will show exactly what the transactions the business is doing. And in that case, it makes it a little easier. Otherwise, they have to go through, if you're trying to do it on a personal account, you're commingling funds, it makes it hard for, say, even Brad and his team to go through to identify the expenses for the business. So we do always recommend having a business account. We do like for you to have a savings. That emergency fund is always good as a backup. In a business, if you have started one, there's always something that comes up, and it's good to have something set aside for those emergencies. But yes, we do recommend that you have an account set up. Now, there are different types of business accounts. As a financial center, our obligation is to work with you to help determine the correct account. Some of them may be set up as a sole proprietorship. Others may be set up as a corporation or LLC. I do recommend doing a little research to make sure of what type of a company that you're going to set up so that you will understand the liabilities based on that setup. But yes, again, we do prefer you to have a business account.
Great, thank you. And then we also have a question for Fifth Third that is slightly situation specific but may relate to others. For Fifth Third, I have my mortgage with you. As a small business owner, mortgage deferral would be much more helpful than forbearance to help me with liquidity. Is that something the bank would consider?
Yes, we...
Oh, Epps, I believe you are currently muted. There it is. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yes, the bank Hello? Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. The bank offers several programs. This is something we would like to look at on an individual basis. If the person asking the question would like to reach out to me, I would definitely direct them to the source. But yes, Fifth Third is very engaged in trying to help clients stay in their homes, as well as you can see, keep their businesses open. So we will work with clients to try to find the best solution for them, whether it's for their home or for the business.
Great, thank you. And then going back to the grants available, Brad, if I have documents that I missed when I filed, can I send it another way?
Yes. So in each case, at least when Accion is the program administrator for the grant, and everything I described here, that is the case, we have a help desk that's been established specifically for this particular initiative. And so what I encourage you to do is on that homepage, let's pick the business interruption grants, for example. On the big homepage, there's a link not just to the application in either English or Spanish. There's also a link to the help desk in either English or Spanish, a place where you can fill out a brief form to ask your question. Our team then has a 24-hour turnaround to be able to provide you with the answer that you're looking for. We also then allow you to provide uploaded documents in that form. So what I'd recommend in that case, and it's happened quite a bit, frankly, is that you just say, my business name is this, my name as the business owner is this, and my business ID number, my tax ID number, whether it be an ITIN or EIN, depending on what you have, so we can find your application really fast. I have additional documents that I'd like to have be a part of my application. I have uploaded them to this form. That's all you got to do. And then we'll take care in the background of taking those documents and attaching them to your application so it's as though you uploaded them yourself.
Great. Second. Next question is the grant is taxable and must be paid in what time?
Good question. So anytime you get free money, that is taxable. The taxes that you have to pay on it and then are due the next time you pay taxes. So let's say you win a grant in 2020, that is income to you in 2020. When you file your 2020 taxes in 2021, then you should include that revenue as you would any other revenue. If you're doing quarterly filings, you just do it appropriately. If you're doing annual filings, you do it on the year, but treat the grant revenue when the dollars arrive in your bank account as the moment in which you received income, just like any other income you would have received in your bank account at that moment.
Thank you. I started my business in 2019 with little revenue to show for that year. How does the big program application account for newly formed companies with very little revenue on their tax return from the previous year?
Yeah. In this case, we're trying to figure out in standardized ways and then idiosyncratic ways how to evaluate as many businesses as possible as fast as possible and get the dollars out to as many businesses as we can as fast as we can. So most businesses are going to be the standard case. July and August 2019, July and August 2020, the revenue loss is pretty clear. We'll fund on that basis. But when there's a situation which is just different, like the one you just described here, then in that case, again, there's an opportunity at the very, very bottom of the application for you to just write for us why your case is different. And then tell us through an upload of documents why not just have you explained this to us, but here's my proof of what we have here. And so we'll try to take as much care as possible to identify, like, with the story and the proof to back it up, what's different about this particular small business, and do the best we can to evaluate on that basis. I'll say that we're trying to be as standardized, equitable, fair as possible in evaluating all businesses of the same kind the same way, so that we distribute funds in a really, I think, fair way. Therefore, it gets hard when you've got a particularly unique case, but we'll do the best we can in taking the information you provide us and evaluating you on that basis.
And Brad, speaking of distributing the funds, can you give us a little bit of background on how funds are being distributed?
Yeah, the mechanism is that we're going to be ACHing funds to your bank account. In a socially distanced environment, we don't want to be messing around with paper checks or have people come to an office or something like that. So on the application, you're asked to put in your bank information that we will only use if we're sending you money. And obviously, we put a significant layer of security on top of that. It goes without saying. But it'll all be electronic in the distribution of the funds. And so that's why it's yet another reason why it's important to have a business bank account statement that you upload for us on top of all the reasons that I've already described before, because that then tells us, yes, this is the right place for us to send the money because this business bank account is the right bank account and routing number for this particular small business owner, and that's the way in which you'll get the funds.
Brad, I want to also add, I'm not sure if you send the checks in the business name, but a lot of the financial centers will try to do a match of that name on the check to the account. So again, just reiterating what Brad said, then it becomes even more important because a lot of the financial institutions will attempt to match that together. But if you're receiving business funds, you should not be adding those to a personal account. So that's where the business account will become more of a factor for you.
Yeah, thank you. A question came in of, can I apply for the loan or grant as a cab driver and as a cab medallion owner? Brad, can you talk about the eligible businesses for the big grant?
Yes. So think of your eligibility here as the way in which you have structured your business for purposes of filing taxes and establishing business bank accounts. Whatever you've done, that's the way you should apply. And so if you've structured yourself as a business owner in which you have employees, say, then do it that way. If it's a sole proprietorship, using like your activity and corporate structure, apply that way. Because what we're going to be looking for is just being careful about the way in which you fill out the application form. And we're going to match those answers against the documentation that you provide to substantiate what it is that you've done. So this is a really, I think, interesting, nuanced question, which we spent some time on, not just in the taxi context, but in some others as well, in which there's options here, as this questioner described. What really, I think, is the most appropriate thing to do here, because it's the most straightforward way for us to size the amount of grant we can provide for you, to match your application with the way that the documentation that's uploaded reads, taxes and bank statements.
Thank you. Next question is, will my application be disqualified for having multiple applications? So can you talk maybe about business owners who have maybe multiple physical locations or multiple businesses? How would they be able to apply?
Yes. So first of all, you'll not be disqualified. If you are a single business in which you're a business owner that has a single corporate structure, single business bank account, but you happen to have multiple locations, then you apply once and you just sum up either your costs or your revenues on that business bank statement for the whole of the business across the locations. If, on the other hand, you're structured in a way that is such that you have multiple businesses, whether or not they name the same things are relevant, really, you are able to apply for each one of those businesses individually. And so if you have, say, a business bank account that's focused on business X, another business bank account that's focused on business Y, they can be at the same location, they can be different locations, doesn't matter. If you have a tax ID number for business X that's different than the tax ID number for business Y, you can, and I'd say you should, apply for both business X and business Y, even though you're the same single business owner.
Thank you. We have another specific question. Good morning, and thank you for the information. My question is regarding the comparison from last year's and this year's bank statements. I opened in April 2019. My account shows more funds this year because of grants and other income, which make it appear that I'm doing better this year. However, a monthly comparison of income shows I'm down this year compared to last. How will this be taken into consideration if you're only looking at the 2 months of bank statements?
Yeah, great question. Here's what we're not doing. We're not opening up July and August of 2019, July and August of 2020. Look at the bottom line and see what the balance is and just doing some math. We're actually going through the statements. And when we're going through the statements, we're in the 2020 side, taking out anything that's quite obviously a grant or a loan, because that's not revenue. We're looking to compare revenue from 2019 and 2020. And so we'll take care of that. There may be some circumstances where we can't tell exactly what some debit is or some credit is. And in those cases, we're going to send you a note and ask you to clarify. But we are trying the best we can, even though we're doing it at high speed, to get the money out as fast as possible, to look at true revenues and expenses rather than just balances in order to get to that. Now, your other question, I think, about, but I had very low revenues and balances in the beginning, and now it looks like you've got more so because your business was new. that will be important for you to just explain in the way that I described before in that box at the bottom to sort of give us some narrative about the way that the statements read. This is also the case for just pure seasonal businesses where July and August just might be sort of non-revenue generating months. You generate all of your income around the holidays, say. So you need to explain that too. And in those cases, what we would advise in the seasonal business cases is it is okay, even though we don't say this out loud really because it makes it much more complicated for us. If you have two different months that are better for you to describe the difference between 2018 and 2020, you can do that. As long as you describe what it is that you're doing in the box. Use the same upload spots for July and August, but you might pick different months. Say you'll do, I don't know, January and February 2019 versus January and February 2020 or something like that. But generally speaking, I look for July and August because it helps us to create some degree of consistency. Important point, though, in all of that is use that narrative box to your advantage to describe your situation so we understand it.
One of the things, too, Brad, that you mentioned was timing. And, again, that's where having that separate account makes a difference for timing because if you have a set business account, those large deposits will stand out and they'll be easily identified. So, but, again, if you're trying to commingle funds, it makes it harder for Brad's team to evaluate, which does slow down your process. So, again, that's where the importance of having those funds separated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Epps. That's a great point. We have time for a couple more questions. First question is, can I apply to Accion for a grant to pay off my internet bill so I can get back to earning revenue in my call center business? Brad, can you go over what the grants cover?
The answer to that is yes. So again, in all of the grants which we are administering on behalf of our partners, whether it be the state or the city or Westside United or counties, there's a number of those too. In each case, there's been very specific criteria about what a grant can be used for. In the context of the business interruption grant, for example, you've got this difference in business revenues. We spent most of our time on that. But in some particular industries, they're called heavily impacted industries, for which it's been really tough even beyond the toughness that everybody else has suffered. Event centers, performance venues, things like that, that have just been fully shut. Or maybe looking at your expenses as well, and that includes utilities. But the case of a call center, I think it really is the difference in revenues. So, for example, if you had in 2019 $50,000 in revenues, but because all that business has dried up because the call center demand isn't as it was before, and therefore in 2020 your revenues are far, far less than that, then that is what we can provide a grant for. So I absolutely encourage you to apply on that basis.
Are these programs applicable to businesses operating in Illinois but incorporated in other states?
Yes, we are looking for businesses whose business address is in Illinois, and we substantiate that, particularly where the business bank account address is, if the business license or the business incorporation doesn't tell us that.
As a new business owner, what are some tips or four steps should I take when starting to develop business credit?
I'll start there, and Epps, please help out on this one. Just a couple things come to mind immediately. The first is that being very consistent and being on time with all of the payments that you make to any creditor is the fastest way to be able to substantiate the fact that you're a good credit risk, and your credit score will reflect that. Your phone bill, your mortgage or rental payments, whatever it might be. But importantly, ask whoever it is who you pay on a monthly basis for whatever it is your expenses are, whether or not they're reporting to credit bureaus. Because if that entity isn't reporting to credit bureau, you're not getting credit for it. So you really want to encourage anybody who you're paying on a frequent basis, on a regular basis, to report to the credit bureaus so that you get that benefit on your credit score. I think finally, and then I'll ask Epps just to give his thoughts. I think when you have opportunities to take out small amounts of debt, whether it be a credit card or small microloan, whatever it might be, those are really good opportunities to prove good repayment habits, which help you to build your credit score pretty quickly in many cases. Even if the dollar amount isn't particularly large, it's the habits that the credit scores are trying to get at. Epps, anything to add to that?
I'm sorry. Yeah, one of the things I always talk to prospective clients on is review your personal credit first. Get a copy of your report. Make sure what's on there is accurate. If not, Brad's team and the Fifth Third Bank team are willing to work with you directly to help you rebuild your credit. We have some rebuilding credit programs on both sides. So a lot of times people will think that the business itself is credit is what we base decisions on. When it comes to credit, it is primarily based on your individual credit to the bank side. So we recommend you allow one copy of your credit report each year directly from the credit bureaus to get a copy of that and go through, make sure it's accurate, information is up to date. That is where you start. If you have no credit at all, Fifth Third does offer some programs to help you get your credit started, and we would definitely like to talk with you about those. But it is important that you evaluate your personal credit first. If you don't understand the credit report, again, Brad's team and the Fifth Third team are definitely willing to work with you to help explain those reports and help you get it in the right direction to get your credit in the place it needs to be.
Yeah, that's a good point here. Look, credit reports are wrong sometimes. We see it, I wouldn't say frequently, but we see it frequently enough that it's really important, as he just said, to make sure that on that annual basis, you just look at what's on that credit report, make sure it's right. And if it's not, use the contact information that the credit bureau provides to get that fixed, because there's no reason why just because somebody made a mistake that you should be penalized for that. So do keep your eyes on that.
Thank you. And as we wrap up, Brad, can you name the types of grants and loans that you covered during your presentation?
Yes. The names of them are, let's see if I can get this right, the Business Interruption Grants from the state of Illinois, the COVID-19 Recovery Small Business Grants from Cook County, and that's particularly focused on suburban Cook County, even though the coaching associated with that program is for all Cook County, including the city of Chicago. Thirdly, the Westside United grants. Those are small business grants for Westside businesses. And finally, the Accion term loans and lines of credit, which we will return to providing late this month. Those are the four things we talked about in detail. On top of that, there's a longer list of things which have been in place in the past and may or may not be coming back, but at the moment, those are the four. And then finally, I will say that just as a reminder, use that Accion Emergency Capital webpage that I mentioned before. Frequently check that because we're always updating that. And anytime there's a new grant opportunity, there's a new emergency loan opportunity, we'll post it right there, and you can find it at any time. I will put the link to that in the chat so that everybody can see that.
Great, thank you. So I do want to say thank you so much to us of Fifth Third. Fifth Third is an Expo sponsor and longtime partner of ours, so thank you for joining us. Of course, Accion is a partner of our department, but also of the city, just a great community partner, lots of good information. And as we wrap up, Epps, do you have any final words, maybe possibly including some contact information for you?
Great. Thank you for doing that. As Brad said, that if you go to 53.com, we do have lots of information about Fifth Third Bank, the programs that we offer, and the programs about business accounts. If you want to reach out to me directly, my contact number is 708-636-7100. If you don't mind, I'd like to repeat that one more time, 708-636-7100. Most of all, I just want to thank you all for attending. Like Brad started out, it's really awesome to see so many people on the phone looking at ways that they can get their small business either started or continue it going. I wish you all the best. Please use your resources. If you're out here trying to do it by yourself, you're going to find this to be a difficult process. If you don't use sources like Brad or the City of Chicago or Fifth Third Bank, you you will have a harder time getting through these processes. So I want to thank you all again for participating. Reach out to us. We're here to help. That's why we're doing this, because we want to help all you get your businesses going and be strong and be a big part of your community. So thanks again for having me on. I appreciate that and look forward to talking.
And I'll add my thanks for all of the great businesses that you are all running in an incredibly difficult time. This is why Accion exists, to help small business owners like you to survive and thrive, be able to build wealth for you and your families and your community. So thank you for everything you're doing. And thank you to Fifth Third and the city for being such great partners for a very, very long time.
Great. Thank you both once again.